Tonight's session is Staying Connected and Building Your Network, Q&A. This session is hosted by the Umass Amherst Alumni Association. Just to give you some details about the team that's here behind the scenes for this session, my name is Karen Schultz-Battistoni. I'm the Director of Alumni Volunteer Relations. And then we also have Stephanie Subach, the Director of Constituent and Regional Programs. The two of us will be behind the scenes here on the chat box, looking at all of the questions that you submit, or if you have any comments or technical issues or need any assistance, please mention anything into the chat box and we'll be able to assist you from there. How to connect with us. When you click on the bottom menu bar, you should have a chat box. You can choose to chat with just the panelists or with the panelists and the entire audience. That's your choice. If you click raise hand, that'll just call our attention to you, and then we can connect with you through chat. To let you know that tonight's session is being recorded, and by participating in tonight's session, you are consenting to being part of that recording. All attendees' microphones are muted and your cameras are off. The only cameras and microphones that will be enabled for the session are those of the panelists tonight. So we thank you for participating, and let's get started by introducing our speakers for tonight. Tonight's speakers are Susan Callender, class of 1986. She's the Chief Confidence Officer for Business Class. And then we have Kimberly Belowchuk, class of 1992, owner of Career Coach for Young Professionals. So welcome, Kim and Susan. We'll now have them pull up their cameras and enable their microphones so that they can join us. We thank you all for submitting all of the questions that you have sent to us through the registration. We got quite a few questions, and that's what's driving tonight's session. So we'll be doing a Q&A format where we'll be asking your questions to Susan and Kim. And then during the course of the evening, we'll also be taking additional questions that you've submitted in the chat box. Okay, so welcome, Kim and Susan, and let's get started. So the first question is more general networking terms. So we do acknowledge that we are in unique times with everything happening in the world and with social distancing. So what are a few things we can do to help one another in regards to networking during this time? And Kim, if you can start us off answering this one and then just introduce yourself too as well.
Sure, thank you. My name is Kim Belowchuk, 1992 grad of what is now the Eisenberg School of Management. For the last, since 2008, I've run my own business, helping new and recent college grads mindfully find jobs in alignment with their skills and interests. Before that, I worked in a number of campus career centers and corporate HR. I also teach yoga, so I bring a lot of that mindfulness from there and into my coaching as well. So in terms of things we could do for networking, clearly we're in a unique situation here. A big proponent of networking and as a way of finding jobs and making connections and figuring out what it is that you want to do. So I think the first piece here for you to think about while we're all home is how does your LinkedIn profile work? And there's some basic pieces to make sure that it's up to date. Checking your photo, for example, or your most current jobs. Employers and anybody that you reach out to connect with are gonna look at your profile as soon as you reach out to connect with them. So you want to make sure that that's an accurate representation of who you are. I should add a congratulations to you, those of you on the call who are new high school grads or maybe soon to be, as well as UMass grads, and that counts for you too, right? Never too early to have a professional profile on LinkedIn. Because a lot of us are not commuting as much as we have been and are spending more time with the same people at home, this is a great opportunity for you to maybe sneak in some time to reach out to other alumni, other connections that you might have, and request just an informational interview or maybe just a check-in. How are you doing? What's going on? what kinds of job are you, what kind of job are you doing? So lots of informal ways. I've connected with so many people over the last 8 weeks that I just never had time to before. And now our schedules are a little bit more flexible to be able to accommodate those kinds of just ad hoc meetings. I'm a big fan of Follow-Up Fridays, which is tomorrow. So if you're hot off the presses from tonight and have some motivation, it's a great day to just check in. Hey, how's it going? I was thinking of you. Would love to reconnect and see how you're doing. So I'll leave it there for now. I'll jump it over to Susan, and we can certainly, if you have follow-on questions, don't hesitate to add them in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kim. The next question is, how can you maximize the time we have while we're home networking? I don't know if you want to elaborate. You might have touched a little bit on it if you wanted to add anything else.
Well, like I said, I think we all have the time flexibility working in our favor right now. So if you could carve out, I don't know, whatever's reasonable for you, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, just to reach out to people that that you haven't before, and make sure that just say hello and reach out. Like I said, a lot of something like 80% of jobs are never advertised. So the more you can connect with people, you are doing lots of things. You are practicing your pitch, right? Who are you and what do you do, so that you can introduce yourself to people. You can practice your interview skills as you start to practice informational interviewing. What do you do? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How's your job going now that we're in the middle of this pandemic? What kind of education did you have? What kind of certifications might I need? How's the industry looking now that things are starting to shift? You can ask all those kinds of questions. And then, just continue to follow up with people maybe that you haven't reached out to. I have some clients now that I've encouraged to go back and outreach to people that they went to school with, right? They went to Umass with, or they went to high school with, or they worked at jobs with. There are lots of people that you're probably connected to that you haven't reached out to for a while. And how cool would it be if you got a call from somebody? I've been teaching an online yoga class, and one of the guys that signed up is a guy that I met my freshman year. Actually, I think I met him at orientation at Umass, and I haven't seen him in years, and I probably haven't talked to him for a while. We exchanged birthday messages and stuff, but I hadn't talked to him forever. And here he is in my yoga class. So we had another meeting last week after the yoga class, but it was just kind of fun to catch up and chat with people. So if that answered the question, Karen, from there.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Kim. So now, Susan, we've got a question we're going to turn over to you and allow you to introduce a little bit more about your background. So the question is there a way to turn some casual small talk conversations into a conversation that maybe has more value or meaning?
There is, and I'll start by saying I am indeed a 1986 HTM graduate, and UMass, you are a part of such a vibrant community. I have had a long, successful career at every junction, and I attribute all of my success in my career to two things: my family and UMass Amherst. So know that you are in great hands. Now, as far as networking goes and small talk, so many people tell me they don't like small talk. They don't know how to start a conversation. You are doing yourself a disservice if you walk into a room or anywhere and you don't know how to make conversation with another person. So I encourage you right now, unless you're in a situation where you cannot go outside because you have to keep the people in your home safe, then when you're in line, even with a mask on, waiting to get into a grocery store or a CVS, I'm in Boston, so it's not unusual to see that, start a conversation with the person behind you. And you'll be surprised that people are willing and open to have a conversation, because you cannot get to something deeper without first starting with small talk. You cannot approach a person and say, so do you know who's hiring? Do you know how I can get an interview? Do you happen to know he's the vice president or she's the CEO of whatever over there? Can you introduce me? That's not going to happen. A person would look at you like you're crazy, and we don't want to be weird. So we want to have a few nice moments of small talk, chit chat about anything. And the easy way to make small talk is to focus on the other person. Ask a very basic, innocuous question. And then the key for you is to listen to that answer. Because the more you listen, the less you have to think of things to say. And then after a few minutes, after you have a warm, friendly banter going, less than 3 minutes, because your conversation, every conversation does run its course and it will have an end. So give yourself about 3 minutes and then use that as an entree to ask the question that you want to ask. So how is your job search going? Or what are you doing for work? Or anything along those lines. It really depends on the setting that you're in. Is it a job fair? Is it something related to Umass? Pardon me. Whatever the situation is, do your homework prior to going there. And it will be easier to start a conversation with that person. Get the lay of the land, spend time with people that can help you so that at the end of that event, you leave knowing that you've made the best contacts. It will not do you any good to practice small talk, to have great conversations, and they were all with people looking for jobs, not key people in the room that can help you find a job. Now, I assume that you are all interested in networking for job searching purposes. If you have a networking question or small talk question that is not job related, just leave a message in the chat.
Okay, great. So the next question, I'm going to also turn over to you, Susan. So this is when someone is trying to have a conversation with someone, but it's taking place virtually. How can you convey energy and enthusiasm when it's a video conversation or maybe even a phone conversation?
Okay. So if it is by video, I think I was doing this in answering my last question. I'm giving you eye contact pretty much the whole time. Because if you are not looking directly at the camera during a video chat, if you're looking at the person's image on the screen, it will seem like you're disinterested because you're not looking at them. So train yourself to give the camera eye contact 100% of the time. If you are having a phone conversation, the best way to convey energy and enthusiasm and interest in your voice in a phone conversation is to stand up, because you have better diaphragmatic breathing when you're standing. Your voice sounds more energetic when you're standing. So stand when you're having a phone conversation. And also via email, there are a few things that you can do to show that you are interested and you want a person to realize that, you know what, this person really is, they hear me, they get me, they're speaking directly to me. The number one way is to use a person's name. And I'll also add that on to the email and phone. Use a person's name as much as possible. How do you do that in an email? Aside from the greeting, after the, when you start the second paragraph with that person's name. And then in the third or fourth paragraph, embed the person's name in that. I try to use exclamation points sparingly. They are a great way to convey enthusiasm, but for the most part, unless it's true enthusiastic, a truly enthusiastic sentence, exclamation points are not necessary. But keep in mind that exclamation points are not so much for you, they're for the reader. So if you feel that they're truly necessary, by all means, use them. Now, if I want to convey another type of emotion, I would never use an emoji, but I may say smile in parentheses. If there's some rush or urgency to the letter, I may say in parentheses, P-H-E-W. But it conveys that emotion. It will get a reaction out of the reader, but it also is not an emoji that does not belong in a professional communication, but it still expresses the feeling that you're passing along.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think especially now people are trying to still come across with their personality, and that's something to try to navigate. So thank you. Next question.
Can I just add a quick piece on that?
Yeah.
And I agree with
Sure.
all of what Susan said. I think it's great. You probably saw me nodding my head or, agreeing. The piece about standing up, I had a friend once who is 6'5", and he used to walk around while he was on the telephone, and he literally used to just pace around his apartment. And this was before we were all tethered to, devices like we are now. And he would get so out of breath. So I would just caution you that if you're going to move around, that's okay, but make sure you're not going to trip over the dog, or that you're still focused on the conversation. So I always thought that was a funny story. His top favorite writing surface was the top of the refrigerator. He was that tall. So
Wow.
just a FYI.
Yeah. So the next question we've got is, I don't know what to say when in networking situations. So trying to jump into a conversation. So maybe the conversation's already rolling along and then I enter the room. How can I jump into a conversation that's already started? And Kim, if you can start us off on that one.
Sure. So I'm going to assume you're in the live room with somebody else, which we haven't been doing for a while and may not do for a bit. But if you're new to a situation, or you are new to a networking event, you've never been before, and maybe you don't know a lot of people in the room, I would invite yourself to introduce yourself to whoever the coordinator is. And usually there's a check-in place when you get there, right? You get a name tag or something, and you might say, I'm looking for the coordinator of this event, or I'm looking to speak to somebody who's involved in this particular industry. And generally those people will say, oh, that's the person you need to talk to, right? Or let me go introduce you. And if that's the case, then that makes it super easy. Let's say they just say, oh, there's a, go find that gentleman in the black jacket. That's probably going to be a little bit tricky. But you might just go over and sort of wiggle in and say, so-and-so referred me to you, and I'd like to have this, I just wanted to introduce myself to you. Now, it may feel like you're sort of lingering on the sidelines for a little bit, so you might need to kind of circle around and see where there's an opening. But I would just get yourself in there, right? If somebody's in the middle of a conversation, you don't want to obviously cut them off, but you can always, if the group is big enough, there's usually somebody that's not actively engaged in the conversation, so maybe you start there, right? If it's a group of people that don't look like they're having a big conversation, then that they may be looking for you to help save them and have that conversation too, right? So just step in and be bold. I always recommend for networking events that you have a goal. Why are you there? How many people are you looking to meet? So sometimes when I go to a networking event, I'm going because I know other people are going to be there that I want to see. So I make a note, and maybe I even send them a note ahead of time. Hey, Susan, I'm going to be at this event. Are you going to be there? It's going to be really fun to connect with you in person since I've only met you electronically. That's a nice way to break it in. And then when you see that person, you could just walk up to them and say, hey, I've seen you online and I'm interested in having this conversation. Set a number of people that you want to meet with that night. So let's say that you go into a networking event and it's not realistic to go meet, 500 people or even 30 maybe, but go in and say, I'm going to meet 3 new people tonight. Maybe one of them is somebody that you've already met, at least virtually, and then you're going to meet 2 other new people. I would almost guarantee that after you meet those 2 first people, or those 3 people in total, that you're going to meet a whole bunch more people. You're going to be on a roll, things are going to get easier, and you're going to be able to have better conversations. So know what that goal is. Sometimes you just go to a networking event to hear whoever the speaker is, and you decide that if I meet 2 or 3 people, that's great, and if I don't, I get the content that I want. So think about why you're going, and hopefully that answered your question about being able to sort of wiggle into a conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kim. So the next question is, when someone is more reserved, maybe they're an introvert, how can they approach networking? And Susan, can you talk us through this one?
I most certainly can. The best thing you can do, the number one thing to do if you are hesitant to make conversation, if you're a quiet person, shy, introverted, reserved, is to prepare, to go in with a plan, with a certain number of people that you want to meet, questions that you want to ask, know what key people look like so that you know who to approach. When you have a plan, then you have a purpose, and that purpose will get you what you want out of this gathering. The next thing is to approach groups of either 3 people or more, or just single people, and try to avoid, at all costs, groups of 2. There's a reason why. Because 2 people are more likely to be deeply engrossed in a conversation, where one person would welcome conversation, and when you have three or more, there is a higher likelihood that at least one person of that three or more is checking out or slightly checking out of that conversation, and therefore it's safe for you to approach that group. Now, how can you tell if somebody is checked out of a conversation? And this goes for two people having a conversation at the same time. If two parties, if their shoulders are squared, so if my shoulders are directly facing another person, if our toes are facing each other, then we are fully into a conversation. However, if you are the person I'm having a conversation with, but my shoulders and my toes are facing this way, you can safely assume that this conversation has run its course for me and I will be taking off, because our shoulders and our feet face the way that face in the direction that is getting our attention. The next thing is to just be present, to have presence. And presence means to be totally into the person that you're speaking with. Then you don't have to worry about the noise in your head and how do I look and am I saying the right thing and all of these things that, all the overthinking that introverts tend to do. Just focus on that person. Don't look over their shoulder to the best of your ability. Sometimes it's natural to look once, but then once you notice that you've looked once, don't look again in the course of that conversation. It's as simple as that. You have to challenge yourself to have deep conversations with people. That's how they'll notice you. That's how you'll come across as being more compelling. But it's also that safety area for you, because you won't have to bounce around to more conversations than necessary. You want to have some depth, but not so much. You don't want people to be a crutch for you. But at the same time, you don't want them to say goodbye to you first. You always want to end the conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
The next question, I kind of have two interlocking pieces. So I'm going to give them both to you. And this one also, I'm going to start off with Susan, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So how much conversation is enough? I don't want to overstep and be an annoyance, whether it's in person or through an email exchange. And then kind of the other component of this is somebody in the chat box indicated that they had an offer rescinded, a job offer was rescinded by a company, and they're trying to manage staying connected to them, letting them know they're still interested in that company at some later date. So also managing that kind of conversation.
Okay. So how much conversation is enough? A conversation in a networking gathering where the intention is for you to meet many people. It's not just a meeting with you and one other person that was scheduled that way. You should look at a minimum of 3 minutes, a maximum of 5 to 7. It is not a 10-minute conversation, because conversations run their course. Once that back and forth banter is ended, it's over. Excuse yourself. Be a connector. Bring someone else over, a person that appears to be alone that's near you. Introduce yourself quickly. Hi, Megan. You see their name tag? Megan, hi, Susan Calendar. My pleasure to meet you. Have you met so-and-so? When you are that person, people look at you like, wow, I don't believe they did that. All you did was introduce them to another person in that room. And you've also rescued that single person. The other part of that question was how to stay in contact in an email exchange, and also going to the question in the chat about an offer that was rescinded. You do want to stay in contact, but what you want to do is be a person of value. You don't want to be a beggar, because you're not. There are other jobs out there for you. So you don't want to be in that position of, please sir, please ma'am, may I please have a job? I'm still here, I'm going to email you once a week. No, that's not you. There's other people out there that want you and need you. So if a job offer has been rescinded, by all means follow up. Brief. You know, paragraphs should not have more than 2 sentences. People are going to skim. You know, they don't need your life story and what a pleasure and honor it will be to work for them at some point down the road. They know exactly why you're not being brought into the company right now, but just send them a brief, polite note. I can help you with that at another time. If you would like, you are more than welcome to contact me, Susan, at businessclass.expert. However, you also have social media. What is that person's social media presence? Is there something that you can do on YouTube or LinkedIn where you can post a video with your qualifications or teaching something that lends itself either to that company or another company that is a natural search for people so that your name rises to the top? Video is the most popular medium now. So there are ways that you can be seen either by that employer or by others. So there's no need for you to chase or beg, because I guarantee you something else will come up and you'll say, wow, I'm so glad that one didn't work out. I guarantee you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
I
go ahead, Kim.
I was gonna say, can I just tag on to that?
Yeah.
So I agree absolutely with Susan. I think that it's okay for the company that has rescinded your offer to just reply and say, gee, I'm really disappointed this didn't work out, but I absolutely understand given all that's going on, right? I'm guessing that it's based on what's going on in the economy right now. And that I hope we can keep in touch, right? So hopefully you're connected to that person on LinkedIn. And you know, the same way for companies, for other companies that you've turned down offers, you can certainly keep in touch with them as well. You never know where those people are going to end up, right? The companies that you turn down, maybe those people are going to work for a different company and they would take you there, right? There are all kinds of things that are impossible to predict, but I would keep all of those bridges nicely connected, and not a, I forget the word Susan used, not a creepy way, like not, you don't want to hang out with them all the time, but that you're, you know, you're just a respectable professional, right? And you can be, you know, disappointed and sad and angry and frustrated behind the scenes, but not in front of that employer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's definitely a situation that quite a few people find themselves in, and then trying to manage keeping connected while not coming across unprofessional, and that balance with it. So that's great. So the next question has to deal with what happens and how do you handle when people have personal questions. So some colleagues maybe start asking personal questions about your family. Maybe you're going through a divorce or some kind of situation like that. How would you handle that when they bring that up in this networking type conversation? And Susan, do you want to take the lead on this?
Sure. The first thing that you want to do is to separate your personal life and your work life. And I'm not quite sure of how many years many of the attendees have been out of school, but you have two separate lives. You have a home or private life, and you have a work life. Your work colleagues are just that, they're work colleagues. Because you work with them or spend a lot of time with them every day, whether it's face-to-face or virtually, measure what you share, because everything is not another person's business. There are a billion things under the sun to talk about that have nothing to do with what goes on once you leave work. So with that said, if a person brings something up that is not their business, but you may have, I'm not quite sure of the backstory to this, you may have inadvertently said something to someone and it's become public knowledge, then you would say with direct eye contact, everything's fine, thank you so much for your concern. I prefer to keep my private life outside of work, separate from work. But direct eye contact, thank you for your concern, I'm good. Hopefully that person picks up. But if you say it over the shoulder or at a distance, they won't. So it has to be direct. Always be direct. Do your best to just say it in the most polite, kind way, but in such a way that you will not have to manage this issue again. If you do feel that it may come up again, then have an answer at the ready so that you can just nip it in the bud just like that, and it's over.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question is pertaining to approaching people. Sorry about that. So sometimes when we're a new professional, it can seem intimidating to approach a senior professional. You know, someone that maybe has a role that we aspire to have, or that has had a lot of experiences that maybe we would love to know about, but we feel a little bit intimidated and overwhelmed. So how can you outreach to someone when you are a younger alum and you find someone interesting? Maybe it's their path, maybe it's their role, and you're trying to connect with them. I don't know, Kim, if you want to lead us on this one.
Sure, of course. So I think, you know, as a new or young professional, reaching out to somebody who's got more experience can definitely seem intimidating. And I think one of the things that people often get confused on or hung up on for networking is that if I ask for information, I need to then provide information back. In reality, we all network all the time, right? Where did you get that sweater? What kind of car did you drive? Where's the best place to get a pizza? We're exchanging information, and that's all networking is. So if you're reaching out to somebody that has a little bit more experience, you're just asking for information. And I mentioned informational interviewing before, and I'll say that you can ask virtually any question, including the salary questions and the you know, promotion questions and all those things. The only question that you can't answer, the only one question you can't answer or ask rather, is, do you have a job for me? Because what's the easy answer? No. And that's the end of the conversation. Generally speaking, once people start, once you've asked somebody for information, they love to share their story. They love to give advice. If they're part of the, I'm always going to get this wrong, so I wrote it down, the Alumni Advisors program at Umass, then those are people that have already volunteered to provide information for you. So those people are waiting for your call. Not that they're, you know, standing by, but you know, when they get a connection, I just got one a couple weeks ago from a new grad who wanted some information, and I love to share information. I actually got a call from somebody at Umass probably 2 or 3 years ago, and she said, "Kim, I want to be just like you when I grow up." And I said, that's really flattering, and I'm going to give you an easier way to get there than I did, because I took a really windy path, and I'll help you make it a little more direct. So again, I don't want you to feel like it's an opportunity, like you need to provide something back to them. However, I have another coaching colleague, and she has a client, a newish grad, a young professional, who reached out to a more experienced executive, and the executive said, you know what? I have a lot of young professionals like you in my organization, and I need to understand them better. Can we work out some sort of mentor relationship? So I'll be your mentor, but you be mine for the younger professionals. And it worked out really well. So you might find somebody like that who's asking for some information back from you. Let's turn the tables, right? And let's say that somebody contacts you and says, you know, a young professional, let's say a new grad from UMass, and somebody reaches out to you and said, hey, my neighbor is looking at UMass, same major that you are. Would you be willing to talk to them for 10 or 15 minutes and just tell me, you know, tell them what you liked about the school, maybe where you lived? I know the food is really good. Is it really as good as they say? Would you be willing to spend 10 minutes with them and share that information? I'm guessing the answer is probably yes, and it's probably going to take you more than 10 minutes. So it's that same kind of thing. I think once you do it once or twice, it's going to get much easier. I know it's a little bit of a challenge at first, but just get out there, have your list of questions prepared, know why you want to reach out to them, see if you can make a connection with them, right? We're both UMass alumni. We both grew up in the same town. Maybe you work with my cousin, or you know, whatever the relationship is. See if you can make some connection so it's not a complete cold call. But I get, you know, and I know I do this for a living, so it's easy for me. But a lot of people reach out, and I know a lot of people like to share information and give advice. So do it, just do it. I have a client that says you can never have too many conversations with somebody, because you never know what kind of doors are going to lead, you know, what kind of doors are going to open, or where those conversations are going to lead. The number one best question you can ask in those informational interviews, once you reach out to people, who else do you know that I can talk to? And can I use your name when I reach out to them, right? So I talk to Susan and I say, Susan, who else do you know that I can reach out to? And she says, oh, you can reach out to Karen, and please let her know that I, you know, sent you. right? Then that makes that next conversation a little bit easier. If you're interested, I have a longer conversation. I'll let Susan jump in, but I have another networking conversation about so go, if you want another story, I'll share it.
Okay.
Let's continue.
You want my story?
Okay.
All right. So I had a client who was actually a UMass grad, and she was living here in the Boston area, and she wanted to move to LA. And so she reached out to the UMass alumni group in LA to see who else she knew out there. And she met some people. She was looking for places to live. She didn't have a job. And I said, you should be asking every single person you know who knows somebody who lives in LA. So she goes, Kim, who do you know who lives in LA? And I said, I don't know, let me think about it. So I go through my LinkedIn profile and I find this guy that I went to high school with. Now I graduated from, I told you, I went to UMass. I graduated from UMass almost 30 years ago, right? So high school, about the same vintage. I haven't seen this guy in 30 years. And I was good friends with him in 4th grade, but that was another 10 years before that, right? So I reached out to him. His name is Paul, and I say, hey, Paul, I have a client who, new grad, she's moving to LA. Can you talk to her and just make sure she doesn't land in the wrong neighborhood? I want to make sure that she is safe. Oh yeah, sure. Here's my number. Here's my email. Have her call me anytime. Okay. No, I haven't talked to this guy in 30 years. She calls, my client calls Paul. Paul says, I would hire you based on what you've told me, but I know you don't want to do this job. So I'm going to give you the name of this other guy that I know. I'll call him Dave, who lives in Northern California. He used to work for me here in LA, but now he lives up north. Call him and tell him I sent you. So she calls this guy, Dave, and Dave says, go through my LinkedIn. Oh, Paul sent you? Great. Go through my LinkedIn profile. Give me the names of the connections that you want me to connect you with. So she goes through and she picks out 2 or 3 and sends him a list. Like, I'd really love to, introductions to these people. And he's like, 2 or 3 people? No, I meant like 30 people. Go through it again and give me all of the names you want me to connect you with. Paul gave you this, so here's all this credibility, right? So it goes from my client to Paul to Dave. And now he's, connecting people back to LA. So it's 4 degrees of connection. Does it feel like it's that far away? I mean, really, like when you start to stack all those together. So she calls some people that he refers her to in LA, and she does all kinds of informational interviews and ultimately gets a job. Absolutely true story. She's still in LA. Talked to her a couple weeks ago. I worked with her maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So good, happy ending story. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask who else can refer you.
Yeah, every conversation and connection can lead to the next one, right? So
exactly.
We are all connected. So that's great. So I do have quite a few questions now where I would say switching a little bit topic-wise to using LinkedIn and some of the online tools. Okay, so to start us off a little bit, one of the people said that they have connections on LinkedIn from past jobs. How can they stay in contact with people that they're not really seeing regularly because they're not interacting in a work way anymore? And Kim, if you can maybe start us on that.
Yeah, sure. So if they're people that you had relationships with before, you might just reach out and say, hello, how are you doing? How's your new job going? Right? Or I just wanted to update you and let you know what's going on with me. I left this job and I'm exploring new opportunities. Again, as long as you don't say I'm looking for a job, right? People will be like, nope, I'm not, like, I can't help you with a job. That's an easy no. So ask them for information. What are you doing? How do you like the company? I have a client too who did a really nice job as she was looking for other jobs, right? She would apply for the job and then she would go onto her alumni network. She wasn't a UMass alum, a much smaller school. And she would go and she would say, oh, this person works there. She'd get an informational interview. And during her informational interview, she'd say, oh, I noticed that there was this opportunity open and I applied for it. I just wanted to let you know that too, but it was really helpful, the information you got me or, shared with me. And every single time the person she did the informational interview with, because she had such a great conversation, would say, what's the job? Who are you working, who does it report to? And she'd say, oh, that person sits next to me, or I have lunch with them, or I run a running club together, or whatever. She ended up with 3 offers the same week, a few years ago before Christmas, just based on all that networking and connecting. So I feel like I'm going a little bit off track here. So reel me in, Karen, if you want. But so just reach out to people and say hello, right? And people are happy to hear from you, I think.
Okay, so in terms then of being online, there's so many places to be online. I know Susan's mentioned a few places and getting your presence out there with video. So there's multiple places to be online and to have a profile and to have an account. Where should I be to help build my network. Susan, you want to start us on some thoughts on where you should be online to build your network a bit?
I will. Thank you. First, I'm just going to follow up on something that Kim was saying, and it brought to mind to me. I would like everyone to, not at the moment, take out your phone, go to your text messages, scroll all the way to the bottom. I don't care how many years of text messages you have. Go all the way to the bottom of all of your text messages, and you are going to start. I have a lot of text messages. You are going to start contacting people every day from the bottom, the people that, it could be, wow, 2010. Okay. There are people at the bottom of my text messages. iPhones were just made in 2010. Wow, okay. There are people down here that you haven't seen or heard from in years. You were just going to say, hi, it's been a long time. Just wondering how things are going. Don't worry about getting back to me. I just wanted you to know that I was thinking about you. Do that to 1 to preferably 4 people every day. Every day, until you make it all the way through your phone. Do the same thing in your email account. Do the same thing in your, whatever, it could be your LinkedIn, it could be looking at your Facebook contacts, because this is what's going to happen. You are going to become a person that people think about, because right now they're not thinking about you. You'll be able to tell them, I just graduated. I graduated last year. I've been out of school for 3 years, where everybody's in the middle of this pandemic, but I'm making the most of it. I hope you are too. I hope your family's well. We're talking like 1 or 2 sentences, okay? You will have people that all of a sudden something will come to mind, and you will be at the forefront of their mind only because you reached out and no one else did. It's as simple as that. So that's a great tip. That is a better tip than going to a networking event that's not curated. A curated networking event is where everyone in that space is there because you have a single goal. You are not, if you are not an engineer, you're not in a room with engineers. Maybe those types of companies are not going to hire you, but you want to be in a room with companies that will only look at you like you are the best thing that ever happened to them, because it can be a waste of time when you're in networking situations and everybody is in a field that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that you want to do. It's going to take you a lot longer to get what you want. I digress, Karen. The question was which platform to be on, and yeah. I'm going to make a suggestion. My number 1 suggestion, of course, is LinkedIn, but LinkedIn can be a little staid, a little boring, a little dull, but you have to be on there with a great profile. The best thing that you can do on LinkedIn, in my opinion, is to do video. Anything that you have to say, make a short, snackable video about it, because people love video. There's so few videos in the feed on LinkedIn. Out of, I think, like 5 or 6 million people that are active users, less than 2% of them post videos. So that means you are always in the feed. Always put captions on your videos, because oftentimes people have their sound off. And another great place for you to be is on Quora and Reddit, answering people's questions. Be an expert. You're an expert. An expert is not a person who's going to hire you and give you a paycheck. You have an awful lot of knowledge inside of you. All you have to be is 1 or 2 steps ahead of somebody else who's asking a question. Go type into Google or type into YouTube, search for anything that you think that you are good at, and it's going to auto-complete with the most popular questions. Why allow someone else to answer that question? You post a video with your best answer, or if you're on Reddit or Quora, give people your best answer, and that is going to increase your visibility, your network, your name will rise to the top of searches because people see you to be a person of value. When it comes to using Facebook, you only want to use Facebook, number one, if you create a business page, meaning that you take your name and you just add on, it can be Karen Battistoni is the person you want to hire. That's the name of the page, okay? You don't want to bring your business contacts into your private page, but create a business page, and that becomes searchable, and just give out value. That's your place to market yourself again, because Facebook is also a search engine. So use these things strategically. Only use Instagram, not to post quotes, but only if you are doing something visual, and that's the best way for people to see your work. But give people value. That's how your name is going to rise. That's the best tip I have for you on that.
Just add one more piece
Great.
on social media. I always encourage people to Google themselves and see what comes up, and see what kinds of things are lurking out there. So if you have a super common name that's really popular, then you might want to add something specific to your link to your signature on your email, so that people can find you easily on LinkedIn. I was just looking for somebody recently, and I pulled it, and it's a soccer coach that I know, and I pulled it up, and it was a woman who looked nothing like this guy, this male soccer coach, right? So just make it really easy for people to find you if you've got a common name. If people are tagging you and stuff on Facebook, you might want to be careful about your privacy settings. Employers, if you don't Google you, employers are going to Google you, right, and see what you're out there. So just take a quick minute and see what's out there.
Yeah, great tips. So we have a few questions about LinkedIn, and I know we want to try to get through as many of these as possible given the time we've got left together. So in terms of LinkedIn, a person wrote in that they were laid off at the end of February and they're trying to job hunt. In terms of using LinkedIn, what recommendations do you have for headlines on LinkedIn or information that they could put on LinkedIn so that they could signal to their network that their situation's changed, they're looking to build some connections to get that next job? So I'm not sure who wants to take that to start.
Yeah,
I would say I'm not a LinkedIn expert, but I do know that you want to post. It's not just your profile. You want to create posts, and those posts help to highlight what's in your profile, because a lot of people will come up for whatever your field of preference is. You want the employers to see that you are more than just basically your resume. That is your profile. And I'll leave the rest to you, Kim.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also think your profile is going to jump to the top based on how recently you've updated it. So you could go in and like tweak a couple of words every day and see how that changes your search results. For that header underneath your name and with your photo, and you should have a photo. Profiles with photos are more commonly reached out to than those that aren't. I don't know what the number, I'm going to say 40% more. Don't quote me on a number, but it's a lot more. But you have 140 characters there, so use something descriptive. If you don't put anything in there, it will default to whatever your last job was. But put something in there, a financial professional seeking opportunity to work in, I don't know, real estate or whatever, right? That was just what came to my mind. There's also an about section, and you can play with that, right? Like nothing is etched in stone on LinkedIn. So if that's getting you the keywords that you want, great. And I would think about what the keywords are that you want people to search for you on. And then use the about section. I think you have 2,000 words there that you can use to put in kind of your story. So whatever you're putting in on something that you'd use on a cover letter that describes why you're a good fit for that job. It might share your story. I've got this many years of experience and I've worked on these kinds of projects and I'm really excited to do X, Y, or Z. You can also put in just a keyword section. So it could be specialties or something. If you look at my profile, for example, I have a whole list of things that I'd want people to search for me, and I've got keywords sprinkled out throughout my profile. But at least those two pieces are really critical, and update those as you reach out to people. That's the first thing they're going to look at, right? Somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I look at their profile If it doesn't have what I want on it, or I think they're gonna want me to hire them for something, then I'm a little bit more selective with who I connect with. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Yeah, and then another follow-up in terms of detail on LinkedIn. So someone indicated in the chat box that they've been using LinkedIn to reach out to other UMass alumni, but not many people have responded to them. They're asking if there's something they're doing wrong, or is there some other reason, or do they perhaps have too much experience in the workforce and people are maybe making assumptions based on that? Thoughts on, you know, how often do people respond when you reach out to them, and tips on reaching out?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So I think if you're just reaching out to people and not putting in a message, you're losing an opportunity to make a connection. So I'll give you an example. I had a woman who reached out to me once, and I didn't know who she was, but I went to look at her profile and I realized that she was someone who used to work with me, but she had gotten married and changed her name. So I didn't respond. But I was being kind of a jerk about it. And I wrote back and I said, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. Can you remind me how we met? And she said, oh, Kim, it's, so-and-so, we used to work together. And I said, why didn't you just say that in your introduction, right? Like, hey, Kim, it's so-and-so, and I got married, my name changed, hope you're doing well, right? Just super simple. But if you're reaching out and asking for a job, like, hey, I just graduated, I'm looking for a job, I wouldn't respond to you either. So it depends what you're putting in your message. It may just be, hey, I'm a fellow UMass alum, and I would love the opportunity to connect with you professionally. Or I have some questions about what you're doing in your job that as I evaluate my own career path, I would love to reach out to you. You don't have a lot of room. It doesn't have to be a long piece, but make something personal there. Unless it's, your brother, your cousin, somebody you see all the time. But even still, you say like, hey, nice to meet you here, right? Doesn't have to be a big deal.
Okay, so it looks like we're getting close on time. I'm going to do one more question that we got in the box here. In terms of self-introductions at networking events, for someone who is pivoting in their career, they're a career pivoter, what would be a good way to introduce yourself in that? And then they also asked, how do they find out about the new industry in this situation? So I guess they're trying to find out about the new industry at this networking event, but their experience in that industry may be minimal. So
I'll take that.
Okay.
You want to have your quick elevator pitch, your 30-second or 20-second line ready to go. And the best format is, pardon me, hi, I am, first name and last name. This is not a club. This is, you are a professional person. Always introduce yourself with your first name and your last name.
I would just say not last name if it's gonna choke you up. If you have a name like Belauchuk at the last name, first name is good. If it's gonna, people aren't gonna understand it, I'm okay with first name. Sorry.
Okay. I help X do Y. I help professionals stand out in business situations. I help executives sparkle on stage. I help so give people a visual of what it is that you do. You are not a title, you are not a company. So you would not introduce yourself, preferably, if you don't plan, you will introduce yourself as, hi, I'm Stephanie, I am an accountant at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Okay? But you could make it much more than that, because that's not who you are, that's what you do. And what you do is not the most interesting thing, because everybody in the room does something. But if you think about what it is that you do, the value that you bring is what's unique to you, because you are not a company, you are not a title, you are a living, breathing human being. And that's really what people want. They want the personality behind all of that education. Education, everybody has that, but who are you? That's why you're special to me. That's why I would select you. And also, I would be more likely to respond to you if you emailed me versus LinkedIn.
okay. So one more kind of follow-up on some of this. Somebody indicated that they're further along in their career. They're in their early 60s, and they said, is there a different way to network than someone who is in their 20s and 30s? Should they be approaching this differently? I'm not sure if they're trying to get at perhaps some age discrimination or something like that, but they're just wondering, in a networking situation, is there anything they can do to position themselves more positively to open themselves up to different roles?
I would position yourself as an expert. You are a seasoned veteran who has all of the prerequisite experience that's required to get things done far beyond anything that that employer may be looking at. That's what you bring. I would not diminish that at all. I would present myself, if that were me, I would present myself like I am the best thing that's ever happened to you, with great confidence. Head held high, I can handle this for you in a way that no one else can.
Okay.
Confidence.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So thank you both for all of your detailed responses on all the great questions that we got before the session and in the box. So now we're going to do a quick pivot. I'm going to have Stephanie pull up the slide for me, and we're going to just give you a few details about the different resources that you can access at any point. So through the Alumni Association, we have several different tools and resources. We have something called Alumni Advisors, where we have alumni in there who have all raised their hand and said, yes, I want to have career conversations. I want to help you for an informational interview. I'm willing to look at your resume. I'm willing to look at your LinkedIn. So you can connect with them through the platform. And a lot of people say they get great response rates because, unlike LinkedIn, where people may or may not be watching the messaging, in Alumni Advisors, they're there to give you advice and support because they've put themselves there. We also have career counselors. So we have 6 different counselors that partner with us here in the Alumni Association. They offer free consultations. And then after the first session, you get a Umass alumni discounted rate. One of our current career counselors is Kim Balauchuk. Susan is one of our counselors from prior. We usually have people kind of rotate in and out. So Susan's also been in that role as well. So we got great resources here. If you want to connect with us for more events, go to umassalumni.com/events, and you can see the whole listing. If you're not getting emails about our events, you may want to update and check your account to make sure we have your updated email address. If you go to Umass Amherst, if you go to umassalumni.com/career, it's going to bring you to the career section where it'll show you all different tools, job boards, tools for organizing your job search, tools to practice virtual interviews, all different kinds of things. So there's lots of tools, resources, articles, and also these webinar recordings. So please check out all those resources. And to finally just wrap us up in the last moment or so that we have, just want to turn back to Kim and Susan to give a closing final thought to kind of end the night.
It's been my pleasure to be here tonight. I truly am devoted to my alma mater. I know that right now, employers, I've been an employer for 30 years, that I will want, if I were hiring right now, or if I knew that I would be hiring in the next few months, I know that I want people that are perhaps even better than the people that I just had. I think that it's in your best interest to put yourselves out there as I am. We've had great confidence. I'm the best thing that's going to happen to you. I will help you. I will help your business. I will help your office, the team, get to where you need to be after everything that you've been through. Because people that may have already been in that role are resting on their laurels. They think they're just coming in. I would select you for being the strongest personality in the room or on paper in front of me or online digitally. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
Again, I would say take this time, while things are maybe a little bit quieter, a little bit different, to update your LinkedIn profile, refresh your photo, make sure that all of the information on there is accurate. reach out to some people, whether it's one a day. I love Susan's idea of going back through your text messages. My phone's not that old. I don't go back to 2010, but go back through your LinkedIn profile and just see, like, who haven't I talked to recently, and just ping them and say a quick hello. And companies are hiring right now. I have a lot of clients who are actively moving jobs within this week or next week. So keep getting out there. And if companies aren't ready to hire, I know some people have had rescinded offers or turned offers down, then start planting those seeds. All those little networking connections that you make are seeds that you're planting, so that as things start to open up again, they'll think of you before they have to post and have 500 new people that they don't know. So use this time to your advantage. There's lots of exciting stuff going on. I know it can be scary and overwhelming, but you've got a great opportunity here. So keep networking. Reach out to me if you have any other questions. Like Karen said, I'm one of the career counselors. I'm happy to offer you a complimentary consultation. Or if you just have a quick question, send me a quick email. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Kim, for sharing your time with us. And thank you to everyone who attended tonight and gave us such great questions so that we truly could make this a great active Q&A. So thank you, everybody. Be well, be safe, and we're here to support you. So let us know if you need anything, and we hope that we can connect with you virtually and maybe see you at some upcoming events too as well. So take care, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Go Umass.